Brave New World is out, and they've adapted quite a few new characters from the Marvel Comics source material into the MCU, as well as changing a few returning MCU characters to adapt storylines they went through in the comics. So let's take a look and rank these characters from the absolute worst adapted from the comics to the screen to the best adapted within this movie, using my award-winning adaptational accuracy rating system, the 3 C's. Those C's, of course, being costume, character, and continuity. Costume rates a character's costume or outfit, their overall look, and their superficial physical characteristics. Character rates their personality, their relationships with others, and their powers or abilities. And continuity rates their origin story, their iconic moments, and their overall place in the world, universe, or timeline. Now, before we get started, let me just say this thing is obviously going to be full of spoilers. So if you're worried about spoilers for Brave New World, for some reason, then get the hell out of this video right now and go watch that movie, then come right back and watch this and let me know what you think. Now, as a sequel in a long-running multi-franchise film universe, a number of these characters are returning, and things like their origins are already set from previous movies. If the character is a major character in this film, or if they're smaller but they go through some major changes within this movie, they'll be counted in the ranking. But if they're just a small cameo, and their change in any of the 3 C's is minimal to none, they won't be ranked, since we'd just be judging them almost solely on factors from other movies, instead of this one, and that wouldn't be fair to everybody involved. So, sorry to Betty and Bucky, though Bucky will be ranked in a future Thunderbolts video. And as I've said in past videos, a character's ranking higher or lower on this list is not a commentary on how I feel about them as a character, only how well they were adapted from the comics in relation to each other. So let's start with the character who ranks the absolute, inarguably lowest in accuracy to the source material in Captain America Brave New World, and would actually rate pretty goddamn low across the entire MCU. At number 11, we have D-Man. In Brave New World, Dennis Dunphy is a military commander who works with Sam Wilson by giving him somewhere off the grid to operate and to help identify the pills President Ross is taking. Then he's killed by the leader. So what's similar to the comics? No, nothing. Nothing at all. Just that he has worked with Sam Wilson while he was Captain America, and that's it. In the comics, D-Man gained super strength and joined a superhero wrestling federation where he wrestled against characters like The Thing. He later becomes Demolition Man and teams up with Captain America, wearing a costume incredibly derivative of other superheroes. I bet you can't guess which ones. He's one of those characters who get used all over the place in all kinds of bizarre ways throughout the years because of his bizarre-looking character in comics. This movie likely took inspiration from a more modern use of him, where he was working as Sam Wilson's pilot and has taken to wearing a boring, quote, cool costume. The character is so dissimilar that I didn't realize he was even inspired by D-Man at all until I was looking through the credits later on. This is the kind of, quote, adaptation I hate the most, where they clearly just glanced at some list of names related at least tangentially to Captain America and grabbed one up for no real reason. The character's nothing similar, and he's dead, so I guess who cares, and what a fun start to this list. Moving on. At number 10, we have someone equally poorly done. Sabra. In the comics, Sabra is a mutant who serves Israel in a role similar to Captain America or Red Guardian in their own countries. From her mutant gene, she has your standard powers of enhanced strength, durability, and speed, as well as a much more interesting ability to transfer her own life essence into others to heal them, as well as to temporarily imbue them with powers of their own. She also wears a lot of equipment to enhance her abilities, including a cape that allows her to fly and bracelets that shoot energy. Alright, sure, a little more comic booky for the MCU, but she's got an interesting set of powers and equipment. Empowered individuals in other countries is something the MCU has not explored a lot so far. Obviously, it's not going to be one-to-one, but I'm interested to see how they did. Let's see. Well, she's not a mutant. She has no powers. She doesn't have any of that special equipment. She's a former widow who was trained in the Red Room, and instead of serving her own country, she serves the United States as the security advisor to President Ross? Alright, so nothing is similar at all. She kind of wears a jacket that has white and blue on it, but as soon as she puts it on, she's out of the movie. This would be like if Red Guardian was introduced as the Secretary of Education and we learn his origin came from AIM. This is not the character at all, and the only reason she ranks higher than frickin' D-Man is she at least kinda wears a costume? Whatever, let's keep going. At number 9, we've got Copperhead. In the movie, Copperhead's the guy Sam Wilson fights at the beginning. He's an agent of Serpent, or the Serpent Society, who besides being pretty buff is just a regular guy. In the comics, Copperhead is also a member of the Serpent Society, but he and the Society are a lot cooler. Instead of just a vague mercenary criminal organization, the comic Serpent Society is an entire organization of snake-themed supervillains. Copperhead in the comics wears a whole snake getup that can protect him from damage, as well as wrist blasters that can send out a paralyzing shock. Not one of the major villains at Marvel, but the perfect kind of character to have Cap fight in the opening act. But they strip anything that makes him or any of the Serpents noteworthy in the movie and make them generic mercenaries. You remember back in First Avenger when all the Hydra henchmen at least had full masks on? Ah, good times. Anyway, at number 8 we've got Redwing. In the comics, Redwing is a Falcon who shares a telepathic bond with Sam Wilson and is his longtime crime-fighting partner and friend. In the MCU, Redwing is a drone that Sam Wilson uses to assist him in combat. Both versions can fly, but the comic version obviously doesn't shoot bullets and lasers or any of that tech stuff, and the movie version obviously isn't alive. The main similarity is that both versions assist Sam, and he does have an affection for him. The fact that characters on this ranking rate lower than a lifeless drone that's supposed to be a full Falcon is kinda sad. But moving up past that, we have at number 7, Leila Taylor. In the MCU, she's head of security for the president, as well as being Sam Wilson's inside source on what the president's up to. His head of security leaks information to an outsider working against his direct order, and his security advisor is either a former Soviet spy or member of Mossad. Man, Ross runs a real loose ship, apparently. Anyway, in the comics, she's not that at all. She's a long-term love interest to the Falcon, who was also a champion for racial rights, and later became a reporter. Just another name they grabbed and tossed in, and didn't even bother to at least make her a love interest. Poor Falcon. I guess that Valentine's Day release date doesn't mean that you're gonna be getting any. Sorry, man. At 6, we have another Serpent Society character, Sidewinder. Sidewinder is done as dissimilarly as Copperhead was. The only reason he ranks a little higher than him is that, at the very least, he is the leader of the Serpent Society in the movie, so that's something. In the comics, he wears a full snake costume that grants him some protection from damage, while in the movie, he just wears a jacket. However, that jacket does have a yellow collar that kinda calls back to the cut of the comic costume's collar, so yeah. Comic Sidewinder also has a cloak that gives him the ability to teleport, but who knows, maybe the movie version just left his at home. We really don't learn much about the character's backstory in the movie at all, so we really can't go into that. But he does survive, so maybe it could be explored someday, though I'll be very surprised. The Serpent Society is a mercenary criminal organization in both versions. Assumedly, other members have snake-themed codenames as well, but as I said, the movie version doesn't bother with the snake costumes, which is a real shame. That would have been sweet. Now, starting with the top 5 most well-adapted comic characters in Brave New World, for what that's worth, we get to the Falcon. No, not that Falcon. Yep, that one. The one you likely already forgot about in both comics and movies. In the comics, Joaquin Torres was a teenager who was kidnapped and experimented on using Redwing's DNA. Those experiments turned him into a Falcon-human hybrid, giving him talons, advanced eyesight, and full wings, allowing him to fly. After Sam Wilson saves him, he soon designs a costume for himself and starts operating as the new Falcon. In the MCU, they wiped away all of this, and instead made him an adult Air Force intelligence officer who started working with Sam back in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Between then and now, he's continued working alongside Sam Wilson and has started using similar flight gear to assist him on missions. The only real similarities are both versions wear green, fly, and work alongside Sam. Much more than any of the previous characters, but still not much. Now, we're in the top 5, and starting with a character who is nothing like the source material, so we'll see where things go from here. At number 4, we've got the Leader. Now, unlike previous characters, Leader was already introduced all the way back in The Incredible Hulk, and he was already very different from the source material in there. In the comics, Samuel Stearns was a simple janitor at a chemical plant who was exposed to gamma radiation in a freak explosion that enhanced his intellect to superhuman levels. He then tossed his old identity aside and renamed himself the Leader, and started using his newfound intellect to try to take over the world and unlock the secrets of the Hulk's power. In the movies, he was already an intelligent university professor and scientist who was assisting Bruce Banner in experiments to cure him of the Hulk. When Emil Blonsky forced him to use samples of Bruce's blood to turn him into the Abomination, he was injured in the ensuing chaos, and some of that blood drips into an open head wound, causing his brain to start expanding. But that's where it was left. For years. But now he's finally returned, and we learn he spent the intervening time locked up for unleashing the Abomination by General Ross. His brain has also been mutated by gamma radiation, and he's gained superhuman intelligence, and like the comic version, his skin has turned green, though a much less vibrant shade than he's usually portrayed. The leader has had multiple interpretations of his enlarged brain over the years, and the movies decided to take inspiration from the more brain-shaped head version, which is easily the boringer, more generic version, in my humble opinion. But that's about where the similarities end. The movie version of the leader doesn't seem to have any ambitions for world domination or really leading anything. He actually doesn't ever even call himself the leader. His goal is to get revenge on Ross for both making him take the fall for Abomination's destruction and for offering to help him get out of imprisonment if he'd use his intellect to help cure Ross's heart problems, but then going back on his word and leaving him there so he could keep using him. Stearns uses his intellect to manipulate Ross and others into a situation where the gamma-infused medication he's having Ross take will turn him into what he hates most and ruin his legacy and reputation. That brilliant mastermind of a plan, though, is thwarted by Sam just stopping a few missiles from starting a war, and Stearns goes to plan B of just telling the world what Ross did instead, causing a pretty much similar outcome. So he's likely not as smart as he thinks he is. Unless, of course, they reveal this is all part of some larger plan later on. Maybe. So both versions are mutated by gamma radiation to have enhanced intelligence. Both are green and are affiliated with the Hulk. The movie version, though, so far hasn't faced the Hulk. And though he's murderous and crazy, he seems like a much more sensible guy. Oh, and also something about being able to see patterns and probabilities of everyone and everything, including other universes, so we'll see where that goes, if anywhere. Now up to 3, we have General Ross and Red Hulk. General Ross in both comics and movies is a military officer who is the father of Betty Ross and uses the military to pursue and capture the Hulk. This is how he's portrayed in the first Hulk movie, but since then the movie versions have been shown having him pursue politics, serving as the Secretary of State and later being elected president. Both movie and comic version are eventually transformed into the Red Hulk, but the circumstances are completely different. In the movie, General Ross is turned into the Red Hulk by the leader to destroy his reputation and legacy in front of the whole world in a complicated revenge plot. In the comics, Ross willingly underwent the procedure to transform into the Red Hulk by a group of scientist villains, including the leader. Though both versions of General Ross are portrayed quite similarly, the Red Hulk in the movies and comics is completely different in nearly every way besides skin tone. In the movie, Red Hulk is basically just a big angry Hulk, but red. In the comics, Ross can transform into Red Hulk whenever he wills it, and retains his intelligence. Unlike Green Hulk, whose strength increases in proportion to his rage, Red Hulk increases his strength by absorbing energies from others, whether gamma, cosmic, or others, allowing him to increase his strength to match nearly whoever he's facing, though there is a limit to how much he can absorb before he overloads. As Red Hulk gets angrier, instead of getting stronger, he gets hotter, which was actually somewhat portrayed in the movie when his clothes burned away while transforming, but not to the level seen in the comics. Visually, comic Red Hulk has yellow eyes, black fingernails, and black hair, while the MCU version has normal nails and eyes, and though his hair gets dark when he transforms, it keeps a Reed Richards-style streak of gray at his temples, though both versions do wear black pants. And the last main difference is their personalities. In the movie, Red Hulk's just angry in your typical Hulk fashion. In the comics, he retains Ross's intellect, but he acts completely differently than Ross usually does. Red Hulk in the comics is pretty much a punk and a bit of a sadist, beating people up for fun and lording his strength and power over everyone while grinning. Though he acts like a brute, he's also very cunning and intelligent. In the movies, there was no mystery, and we watch Ross transform into Red Hulk for the first time, while in the comics, it was a mystery for a long time, eventually revealing his identity as Ross with a bunch of BS plot contrivances I won't go into here. Now, at the end of the fight, there was some semblance of recognition in Red Hulk's eyes, so maybe we could see a version where Ross is in control similar to She-Hulk in the future, but we'll have to wait and see. Now up to 2 with Isaiah Bradley. In the MCU, Isaiah was a soldier in the Korean War, who was subjected alongside with other soldiers to test to replicate the super soldier serum. Though it failed in others, causing them health complications and death, it worked on Isaiah, turning him into a super soldier similar to Steve Rogers. Though after disobeying orders, he was locked up for decades to keep the experiments from coming out into the public eye. In the comics, Isaiah fought in World War II, where many soldiers were similarly subjected to experiments to recreate the super soldier formula. Though there are a few survivors, the others die during the war, and Bradley is ordered to go solo into a mission with no chance of survival to ensure the secrets of the experiment die with him. Though he survives the mission, he is court-martialed for having stolen a spare Captain America uniform upon his return to the US, and imprisoned for decades to hide the secret. Both versions eventually gained their freedom, though the comic version was pardoned and the movie version had to escape, though was eventually likely pardoned as well as he was invited to the White House in this movie. Both versions were soldiers who were experimented and betrayed by their own government in an immoral attempt to replicate the super soldier serum. Their wars were just different. It sadly doesn't appear that the MCU version ever actually wore a Captain America uniform, though. If he had, he really would have taken the #1 spot on this list. If it turns out there's a picture of him dressed in one sitting in his office somewhere that I missed, then we'll just pretend he was in the top spot. Sound good? And now, at #1, we have the most accurately adapted character in Captain America Brave New World. Well, gee, who could it be? Who's left? I don't know. Sam Wilson. Or more accurately, Sam Wilson as Captain America. Now, don't get me wrong. He may be the #1 spot, but that doesn't actually make him that well adapted in the MCU. Just more well adapted compared to others on this ranking. Now, as Falcon, Sam Wilson would actually rate relatively low even here. Both comic and movie version have glider wings that allow them to fly, they team up with Captain America, and have a sidekick named Redwing. The comic version, though, was not in the Air Force, and has the ability to telepathically link with birds, allowing him to influence them and see through their eyes. And, of course, their costumes, totally different. But the differences as Falcon aren't relevant to this list, really. The differences as Captain America are. When he first appeared as Captain America back in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he had a costume that was very similar to the design in the comics. But it looked pretty awful on him, and they changed it into a new original costume that looks a lot cooler. Now, people may think this is because comic-accurate costumes don't work in live action, but they're wrong. That wasn't actually a comic-accurate costume. The comic costume was designed to be made of a very thin material that makes it look sleek and cool. But they used a thick, ugly-ass material instead that looks so bulky and uncomfortable on the guy. This is a common mistake in comic-accurate costumes, and I'd love to see them use materials more akin to what somebody like Spider-Man had in Amazing Spider-Man 2, if they want to do these kind of looks. The comic version also didn't wear a weird helmet and didn't deploy a bunch of tech drones out to fight. Those were creations of the movie that cluttered up a pretty clear, simple design that the comics had. One of the major differences, though, between the comic and movie versions is their personalities. When Sam was Cap in the comics, one of the main things that differentiated him from Steve was that he was quite outspoken about politics and the issues that were happening around him at the time. The MCU version really doesn't offer his opinion on things in this movie, except a bit here and there when he's talking with close allies like Kid Falcon. They tried to do this kind of outspoken, opinionated version of Sam as Cap at the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but they didn't really do a good job. But since they scrapped that side of him in this movie, I luckily don't have to go into any of that right now. So, there are some similarities visually, but the characterization and abilities are totally different. In my opinion, ditch Falcon Jr. and give Sam the ability to talk to a real Falcon sidekick in this movie while he fights the real Serpent Society, and I think they'd have made $1 billion instead of the $35 they're going to make off of this movie, it seems. And there we have it. It's interesting to look at just one movie instead of the whole MCU and see where characters place. The people in charge of this movie made a lot of stuff up and took virtually no actual inspiration from the comics except a few names and kinda loose visuals. Adaptation might honestly be too generous of a word for what we've just watched. It's a shame, since as we go through all this, you can start to get a vision of how much more interesting the movie could have been if they'd embraced the craziness of the comics. A flashback with Isaiah dressed in full Cap gear, a half-Falcon, half-human sidekick, a bunch of villains dressed as friggin' snakes, a leader and a Red Hulk far more threatening than the versions here, and a couple interesting new heroes to flesh out the MCU a bit. Oh, and an actual love interest for Sam Wilson. Come on! Anyway, that's all for now. Let me know below if you think the movie would have been improved with more comic-accurate inspirations, or if you think it would have been even more convoluted and messy. If you like this kind of list, let me know what movie or show or entire cinematic universe you'd like to see ranked in this way next. And if you haven't already, click that subscribe button for more nerd crap. See ya!